dehydration. In the summertime, if you are in some place where it gets warm and hot in the summer, your kid might not be drinking enough water. I mean, I see this throughout the entire year where our kids don't realize that they're thirsty, that they're dehydrated, and they're going to be very dysregulated. There's a book, and the number one tip in that book is hydration and making sure your child is drinking water, starting your treatment sessions if you're working in the clinic or working in the homes, starting your treatment session with a drink of water. Hydration has a huge impact on your nervous system regulation.
I'm Rachel.
And I'm Jessica. And this is All Things Sensory by Harkla.
We are both certified occupational therapy assistants, and together with Harkla, we are on a mission to empower parents, therapists, and educators to help raise confident and strong children of all abilities.
On this podcast, we chat about all things sensory, diving into special needs, occupational therapy, parenting, self-care, overall health and wellness, and so much more.
We are here to provide raw, honest, and fun strategies, ideas, and information for parents, therapists, and educators, as well as other professionals to implement into daily life.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey there, welcome back to All Things Sensory by Harkla. We are thrilled to have you back. I'm Rachel.
I'm Jessica.
And today we are talking about interoception and the summer and everything you need to know about supporting your child's interoceptive system in the summer months when it's hot, when it's sweaty, when they are uncomfortable and dehydrated. How can you support their nervous system?
And we'll answer a listener question at the end.
Yes.
Listener question? Did I stumble around that? A little bit. You know what I meant. All right, so first we need to talk about what interoception is. If you've never heard of this word, you're like, what is that word? I can't even say it. Interoception is one of our hidden senses. It is the internal workings of your body. So are you hungry? Are you thirsty? Do you need to use the bathroom? Are you stressed out? Are you sick? How's your heart rate? How's your blood pressure? And it has a huge impact on your emotional regulation as well.
Yes, interoception is so fascinating. We honestly didn't learn about it when we were in school. It wasn't even, it was a thing, but it wasn't something that we were taught, and we had to do our own learning and research. And there's some really interesting occupational therapists who have really specialized in interoception. Kelly Mahler.
Oh, let me look it up.
She does a lot of work on interoception, sensory explorers. Her Instagram account is really helpful, and she's written a couple of books. Mahler. Thank you. Kelly Mahler.
We've actually tried to get her on the podcast, but I just think that she's super busy.
Yeah, exactly.
If somebody knows her, and wants to let her know to come on the show, that'd be great.
That'd be great. Yeah, just pass it along. Gwen Wild did a course on sensational brain about interoception. So it's just helpful to have the additional learning about the interoceptive system. But really what we're focusing on today is summer, because summer is here and it is hot. At least here in some Boise.
Places. Yeah.
Maybe it's hot where you live, maybe it's not, but summer is a difficult time for that interoceptive processing for a variety of reasons. Number one being it is hot, and our sensory kids sometimes don't recognize when they need to take a break, take a drink. They're too hot. They're likely dressed inappropriately. They're wearing long pants, long sleeves instead of shorts and tank tops. So they're not recognizing that they're overheated, and then they're becoming sick and exhausted and too hot and dehydrated.
Yeah, I'll often see this with my clients who are under responsive to sensory input because they don't feel sensory input the way that they should. So they'll get hot and sweaty, but they don't even realize that they're hot and sweaty. Or the opposite, maybe in the winter, they will be freezing cold and fingers turning blue, and they don't even realize that they're cold because their brain and their body aren't making that connection to that tactile response and that internal regulation response. Like, they just have no idea.
Yeah. Very, very low awareness of like what's happening inside. Like, what do I feel? Very disconnected to what's going on inside.
Another one will be dehydration. In the summertime, if you are in some place where it gets warm and hot in the summer, your kid might not be drinking enough water. I mean, I see this throughout the entire year where our kids don't realize that they're thirsty, that they're dehydrated, and they're going to be very dysregulated. There's a book that I can't remember the name of, but it talks about regulation and behavior challenges, and the number one tip in that book is hydration and making sure your child is drinking water, starting your treatment sessions if you're working in the clinic or working in the homes, starting your treatment session with a drink of water. Hydration has a huge impact on your nervous system regulation.
Yeah, and you can give kids electrolytes as well, and we'll talk about that later on. But, kids do need electrolytes too. They need that salt, and they're probably sweating profusely and running outside. I mean, we would hope.
We do want to be careful to recommend electrolytes sometimes for kids, especially if it's a child who's got a very limited food rapport and the majority of their foods are processed foods, which are already going to have a high sodium content. So we don't want to overdo it on the electrolyte pieces.
We want the good sodium, though.
We do. I understand that.
Tricky.
But if they have a highly processed diet, that's all they'll eat because they're a picky eater. We do have to be careful with too much sodium in the electrolyte mixes. So
err on the side of caution. Talk to your doctor about it.
There you go.
The next one is sun sensitivity, making sure that they are aware of too much sun. We can get sunburns, so maybe have them wear a light long sleeve shirt or a hat that helps to cover them.
Play in the shade.
But they often won't feel, especially our under responders, they won't feel that they are getting a sunburn. They won't feel that they're too hot and that it's time to go play in the shade. So
the other side of that is a child who might be oversensitive to visual input and the sun feels too bright, so they don't want to go outside. Like
I mentioned earlier, Sensory Explorer, she has a book that's called I'm Learning to Poop and I'm Learning to Listen to My Body, and I just recently got the I Am Learning to Listen to My Body book, and it's a great one that's very simple of listening to your body when it's too hot outside, when you are hungry, when you need to poop, all those internal signs, like what does it look like to listen to your body? Your body's not talking to you, but it's still telling you things and increasing that awareness. So that's a good book.
Great. We'll link it in the show notes. Some different activities to work on interoception, specifically in the summer, especially if your child is playing outside when it's really hot, is to have scheduled breaks. So maybe you go ahead and just set a timer for every 30 to 40 minutes, and every 30 to 40 minutes, your child comes in and they get a drink of water. They take a break in the cool shade for a couple of minutes before they go back out to play again.
Yep. Using visual cues, using auditory cues, maybe setting a timer so that way they know when it's time to move to the shade or when it's time to take a drink or when it's time to take a break. But having a visual schedule can be really helpful for them to kind of identify, checking in with their body. How are we feeling? What do we need? Let's really take a break and listen to it rather than just trudge on and keep playing and focus on what they're doing.
Yeah. If your child is at an age and has communication abilities to have a conversation or read books about interoception to identify those body signals, what it feels like when you're too hot, what it feels like when you're thirsty, those are going to be really important, especially to help foster independence later in life for your child. Later on, to be able to identify those signals independently is going to be really important. There's a lot of books out there. You could make your own book. You could just sit down and talk about it during quiet time. You could role play with some of their toys. Maybe some of their toys are getting too hot and they fall over and they need water to feel better. I don't know. Yeah, you're too hot, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And anytime you can turn these like educational opportunities into stories or playtime, your child will retain that information and understand it better.
Making sure that we are dressing them in cool, comfortable clothing, and we're having those conversations about what is the weather like, what should we wear, what's going to be an expected outfit. If your child is like, I'm only going to wear pants and long sleeves, and you're like, you're going to be too hot, talking about the the certain clothes that we need to wear with the certain type of weather and trying to match that, because oftentimes with kids who have sensory differences, they're not going to be dressing appropriately for the weather, or it's wintertime, they're going to be wearing shorts, right? So there's that mismatch there of what they're dressing for the weather. Using umbrellas, maybe they have their own umbrella that they can set up, sunshades, just teaching them, honestly, just sitting down and teaching them, this is what it's like to be in the sun, this is what shade looks like, and helping them learn, this is shade, this is sun. Sometimes we have to teach that way they can really understand that it doesn't always come naturally.
Yeah, I think we most of the time have to teach it.
I think
and
so.
Some kids it just takes longer. You have to repeat it more often.
Yeah. And then talking about how they feel when they're in the sun versus when they're in the shade, and identifying that. And again, the role play too is huge.
I was also just thinking about the clothing. There's so many different clothing companies out there nowadays, but I feel like you could probably find long pants. If your child only will wear long pants or only will wear long sleeves because of maybe some tactile processing challenges, then there's, gonna take a little bit of research to find some clothing companies that have breathable long pants and breathable long sleeve shirts where they aren't going to overheat in them. Yes. That can be a modification as well.
I think the other thing too with the heat is being able to monitor their cues, and you can see when they are starting to decline, when maybe their speech is declining, when they are, slurring their words, or they're just really struggling and they aren't identifying it. You can monitor that, you can see that. And you can also give daycare providers, you can give schools, you can give them a written explanation of like, here's what to look for when my child, needs to take a break, needs to take a drink. Being very clear in your explanation too, to prevent any, health related issues from happening. But I mean, you can see it in a child when they are struggling, and sometimes they can't see it themselves.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. Keeping track of how much water your child has drank can be helpful. So maybe I'm making fun of my words again. Windmills.
Meal table.
Well, that's not a weird word thing. That's a weird phrase thing, apparently, even though that's what it is. What was I talking about? How much water they drink? Water. Maybe you have, this is might sound weird, but this is what I do. I have 3 water bottles that I use, and I know that I've gotten enough water when I've drank water from all 3 of my water bottles.
That is interesting.
So I have 2 water bottles at home right now filled up with water. I already drank my morning water bottle, so it's in the fridge for tomorrow morning.
Oh, good.
And then I have my daytime water bottle.
Wow.
And then I have my evening water bottle in the fridge ready to go.
Interesting.
But it's the only way I could keep track of how much water I drink.
That's a really helpful strategy.
And they're all different colors.
Okay. You have and every morning your same water bottle.
It's my blue water bottle. And my nighttime one is my pink one.
I love that though.
So that could potentially be something to do, is have multiple water bottles for your child, and they are hydrated because they've drank all of them.
Love that. And then
that's my sensory quirk.
It's not even a quirk, it's genius. I need to do that. And then mindful eating, making sure that we are having, healthy, nutritious, getting good protein with our snacks, using visual schedules for the child to know, okay, it's breakfast time. All right, then it's snack time, then it's lunchtime, snack time, dinner time, bedtime. That way they know when it's expected that they can eat. Because oftentimes in the summer months, kids just want to graze constantly, and they never get that awareness of oh, I'm full, or oh, I'm hungry, and they don't really feel that. So making sure that they have that scheduled time, and it's not just a constant, I want a snack, I want a snack, I want a snack. Let them get hungry, so that way they know what hunger feels like. Close the kitchen during non-food times. The kitchen's closed. It'll open at 3:30 for snack. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Some different products that we recommend for summertime. Again, especially if you live in an area where it gets hot and your child is playing outside. Body cooling vests, ice packs, fans. They make the water bottle sprayers with a fan on them. Cold towels. Maybe you get a towel wet and you put it in the freezer for a little while, and then they can wrap it around their neck. Getting a bucket of water and putting water and ice in it to play with while it's hot outside. Those are all really great options to use to help your child regulate their body temperature when they're out in the heat.
Another helpful tool could be using a water bottle that has a specific time and liquid measurement on there. So it tells your child, okay, by 10 a.m. we need to be to this point with our water, and then by 1 p.m. we need to be to this point, so that way they can see how much water they need to drink by a certain amount of time. And again, you have to kind of play with that and, you know, make sure that they are listening to their body as well, and we're not just like overdoing it, but we want them to make sure that they are drinking enough water, and just sitting down and educating them. You know, I remember getting dehydrated as a kid, and I was so sick, and I had to go to the hospital. And as soon as I started drinking and eating, I started to feel better. And I always use that experience to like teach my kids, like, if you don't drink your water, you're going to feel sick and you're going to get dehydrated. We're going to have fluids and all these things. I'm not trying to scare them, but I'm like kind of trying to scare them, be like, water is life.
Well, this happened to us recently on our spring break trip, right? We went to Las Vegas and we're walking the strip, and I mean, it's like over 5 miles, and it was warm. And my kid was like, no, I'm fine. I had, you know, my whatever, I think he had like chocolate milk or something at breakfast. And I was like, okay. And we stopped at like halfway, and I got a Starbucks like iced tea drink, and he said he didn't want anything. And I was like, okay. I mean, he's 11, so I'm trying to let him listen to his body. As we were getting closer to the end of our walk, I could tell he was fading fast. So I was like, here, you finish the tea, eat the ice. And then we got to the very end, and he's like, Mom, I have to sit down. I don't feel good. And I was like, okay, why do you think that is? And he's like, I'm pretty sure I'm dehydrated. And he knows, and this is something that happens to him often, where he'll just be going, and then he'll crash because he hasn't eaten or drank anything. And we talk about it all the time. But again, he's a kid. He forgets. And so, you know, it's like this mix of trying to help them learn how to do it on their own, but also make sure they don't crash.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's a tough balance to figure out.
It's a tough one.
Yeah. So did he feel better after he drank?
He drank some of the stuff, and then we went in. We'd gone to another hotel casino, and we went in and had lunch, and then he was like right as rain.
Oh, okay.
And so we talked about it.
Yeah.
You know? And, you know, he'll get there.
He will. He will.
Electrolytes. We mentioned those a little bit earlier. You know, I personally love electrolytes. I drink the LMNT because I love the salt. But I also don't eat a highly processed diet, so I'm not getting sodium from other sources. So that's why I always just want to be careful with our sensory kids. If they're picky eaters, the main portion of their diet is coming from, you know, processed foods, because that's all they will eat. Just be careful with the electrolyte mixes that you give them, and that they're not getting too much sodium from those two areas.
Yeah. And I personally like the Redmonds, the Relight, and they have a kids version that I drink because it doesn't have like too much, and I drink it in all my water, so that's like a good balance for me. And my kids love it. We don't do it every day, but I'll give them some every couple of days just to help balance it out. But yeah, I mean, follow your gut, follow your intuition.
Yep.
Sunscreens, you know, we are very, what's the word?
Well, I don't agree. I don't like sunscreen.
I don't love sunscreen either. I've always been allergic to sunscreen, and so I've never really used it much. And with my kids, you know, we prefer to just wear a hat, and, you know, if we're going to be out in the sun, take breaks. And I don't like to fear the sun. I feel like we're like flowers, you know, the flowers don't need sunscreen. They need the sun in order to grow.
Flowers don't need sunscreen. Those don't have skin.
That's a terrible explanation. I know, but I don't personally like to fear the sun. And
yeah, what we have found is that if you do use sunscreen, the mineral-based sunscreens can be a little bit easier to tolerate, especially if your child is sensitive to tactile input.
And using it during like the middle of the day, right? You don't need it in the early morning hours and in the evening. But if you're going to be out in the sun for long periods of time, and maybe your child won't wear a hat, or they won't wear long sleeves to protect their skin, then obviously we need something to help kind of balance that out. So, yeah, we love the sun. We love the sun. And, you know, check back in with us in 20 years when we all have skin cancer. And
I haven't worn sunscreen since I was probably a little kid, because there was a point as a teen where I rebelled and was like, I'm not going to wear that.
I did just have a skin check, and we were thriving. So
yeah, doing fine.
Yeah. How many feathers can we ruffle?
Take what you want and leave the rest. We've given you a lot of ideas, I feel like, to help with understanding interoception, especially in the summer where it's hot. Our kids are on a completely different routine and schedule because they're out of school. Maybe they're going to camps, whatever the case is. And hopefully it's been helpful.
Yeah, I think, taking away listening to body cues, using visual schedules, using external reminders as needed, and a lot of teaching. A lot of the interoceptive processing comes from teaching and learning, and it's not just something, some kids just don't listen to those hunger cues. They don't listen to what their body is telling them, and then they wind up in trouble, or they're throwing up because they overate,
or they're having major emotional regulation meltdowns.
Yeah. So really the goal here is teaching them, helping them understand this. I mean, kids love to learn about how their brains work. So I think we can use this as an opportunity to teach them that. And hopefully this gives you a good starting place to potentially avoid, medical conditions during the summer months, like dehydration, heat stroke.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
Hopefully we did our job.
Hopefully it was helpful. All right, let's do a listener question. This question is a little bit long, so bear with me as I read it. Okay, here we go. My daughter is 7 years old. I'm self-diagnosing her as a sensory seeker. The goal is to fill her needs for sensory, mostly tactile. Been listening to your podcast for just over a year. Still need to go through some of the digital courses. Yay. I found that she is golden at school, then comes home and needs to seek sensory big time. You said in the podcast that they're the ones acting out at school, but it can also be that she saves the acting out or getting in trouble for home with mom when she feels comfortable. She's definitely hard to manage at home. I'm wanting to use a sensory diet to help her regulate so we can do activities and family things together without the fight. But also I want to do sensory activities with her so I can manage the mess and then have cleanup time with it. Any suggestions for mom in managing the mess of water activities in the bathroom, leaving a mess, getting out the paint, staying within boundaries of using an apron, putting newspaper down, keeping the paint in an okay place in the house? I would love some feedback. I would love some feedback. She gave us her email, but we'll answer it here.
I honestly can relate to this so much. I have 2 toddlers, and anytime we get an activity out, it's like so exhausting because you have to set it up, then you have to clean it up, and then you have to help them, and then it's just like 3 hours later you're like, my house is a mess because we've done so many sensory activities and they're not experts in helping me clean up yet. And yeah, it's a lot.
So what do you do to
Take
help?
a deep breath. My kids don't necessarily have the same tactile seeking challenges, but I think what I would do if I was working with a client in this situation is I would try to have boxes and bins of the different activities. And that way it makes it easier to put it all back into one box. Like if you have rice in a box, or if you have kinetic sand in a box, or if you have paints in a box, everything just goes into the box. You pull out one box at a time, you play with it. Maybe you even have like the paper and the sponges to put down inside the box, and that way it's just ready to go, easy to clean up. I have like one of those rubber mats too that I like to put down and let my kids play on, because again, you can
Is it rubber or plastic?
It's like silicone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And you can just like hose it off in the shower and clean it up, and just having those expectations too. Also, I'll take a big sheet, the big like the bottom bed sheet, and I'll put that, like I'll put chairs around it and make like a little cave where they can get messy all over the place. They can, throw the beans around and throw the rice around in this one area, and then to clean it up, I just pick it up and then I can pour it back in, and it's all kind of contained.
I think you have to embrace the mess at some point too.
I think you do. And then you also can teach your daughter that there should be a balance of getting messy and cleaning up, and getting messy and cleaning up, and maybe even finding other activities that don't necessarily require the mess, like brushing, using like a surgical brush, using vibration, full body, like crawling under crash pads or tunnels, maybe modifying like her clothing, using compression clothes.
She's a tactile seeker. I would be interested if she would like the vibration plate.
The vibration plate would be an interesting one to try.
Yep.
So maybe moving away from some of those like messy play activities and moving more into like proprioceptive, vibration, heavy work. Like a sensory shaker, like put them in like not a pillowcase, but like like body sock or something, if you can get a body sock for her and fill it with like ball pit balls or toys or stuffed animals, and then like shake her around and let her jump and move, and like she's getting a lot of input. But again, it's not necessarily making a huge mess. So that's my thought.
Going outside as much as possible would be helpful. Setting her up for success after school. So create a sensory corner for her. Have her help creating the sensory corner. And the sensory corner is always there. It's always available. And she can go there after school to decompress. She can have a snack. She can drink some water. That will be helpful for after school time. But it needs to be like a motivating place for her to go to feel good. It can't be like a punishment because she's struggling. So you have to just kind of play with the words on that and make sure that it's not a negative place. It's a positive place where she can go relax and hang out after school. And then she can come out and choose whatever sensory activity she wants to choose for the day. You guys set it up together, you do it together, and then you clean up together. And if she's dysregulated during the cleanup process, because cleanup is hard, you can say, okay, but we have to clean it up. So do you need to take a break first? Do you need to go for a walk first? Should we get a drink of water and then clean up? And do it together.
Yeah, and also being purposeful about your extracurricular activities too, doing things like swimming or karate or rock climbing, or maybe stopping at the park on the way home from school if you pick her up. And that way it's a good transition into the home activities. So that way she's getting more input during these extracurricular activities. And again, we're not just focusing on the tactile input, we're focusing on that proprioceptive activity too. That can be really helpful for kind of organizing the nervous system.
Yep.
So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, that's great. If you have a question that you want us to answer on the podcast, there is a link in the show notes. You can fill out the form and we will try to answer it.
Yep. Don't forget to take a screenshot, tag us on Instagram at All Things Sensory Podcast. Let us know you're listening to these episodes and if they're helpful. And don't forget to leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you're listening. You can watch us on video for our podcast if you're not already.
Wow. Yeah.
Super fun.
Okay.
We'll see you next week. Okay, bye. Thank you so much for listening to All Things Sensory by Harkla.
If you want more information on anything mentioned in the show, head over to harkla.co/podcast to get the show notes.
If you have any follow-up questions, the best place to ask those is in the comments on the show notes, or message us on our Instagram account, which is at Harkla_family or at All Things Sensory Podcast. If you just search Harkla, you'll find us there.
Like we mentioned before, our podcast listeners get 10% off their first order at Harkla. Whether it's for one of our digital courses or one of our sensory swings, the discount code SENSORY will get you 10% off. That's SENSORY.
Head to harkla.co/sensory to use that discount code right now.
We are so excited to work together to help create confident kids all over the world. While we make every effort to share correct information, we're still learning.
We will double check all of our facts, but realize that medicine is a constantly changing science and art.
One doctor or therapist may have a different way of doing things from another.
We are simply presenting our views and opinions on how to address common sensory challenges, health-related difficulties, and what we have found to be beneficial that will be as evidence-based as possible.
By listening to this podcast, you agree not to use this podcast as medical advice to treat any medical condition in either yourself or your child.
Consult your child's pediatrician or therapist for any medical issues that he or she may be having.
This entire disclaimer also applies to any guests or contributors to the podcast.
Thanks so much for listening.